plan.
Yeah, so we're going to go through a couple different things here around the hybrid meetings within itself. My name is Brandon Marcurella. So when we're looking at as far as hybrid work, you guys have seen a lot of shifts, a lot of kind of disruption that has been happening inside of remote work. We've had companies that have really gone, back and forth between bringing employees into the office versus not bringing them into the office versus, hey, we've all been working remote and we've all kind of developed habits. Like, how do we develop those habits and bring them back into the workplace and develop this kind of this hybrid work and be able to shift, after the pandemic? So we're going to go through a couple different things in here around not just hybrid work, but around what is the new normal. And a couple of this is going to be around, pre-pandemic, people in the office that, that had the advantage. During the pandemic, that was, the playing field was kind of leveled. And then as soon as I move over here a little bit, it's more of, moving forward, where do we go from here? A lot of, flexibility in the meetings and Microsoft really driving towards what does that success look like? How do we simplify this? How do we create that adoption of, what is Microsoft Teams and making that shift that's here? So we're going to look at why Microsoft Teams rooms, the inclusiveness. So if you've been familiar or you've seen, I'm sure a lot of you have heard around, the Microsoft Teams rooms. We're going to go through a little bit of the different areas of this, and one of them is the inclusiveness, to be able to foster inclusive and interactive meetings for everyone, regardless of where they are. I've worked remote for 10 years of my life now, so I've built my habits and both in and outside of the office, driven around this. It's really driven to the point of, hey, whether you're in the office or whether you're working remote, you provide that same similar experience. That experience is really driven for everyone. You want to be able to, whether it's a collaboration, whether it's just meeting videos, whether it's being able to edit documents, share content. It doesn't matter whether, I'm in Costa Rica or Arizona or Kansas City. I'm getting that same experience inside and outside of the office. And that has been happening as you're seeing that shift in technology that I'm going to go through here in a minute. It's easy to use for us all. The biggest thing that I've always told people around meeting rooms was, if an end user comes in and they see a bunch of cables or it's aesthetically not pleasing, they already get threatened by the room. And that's kind of a concept, whether it's easy or not. If they go in there and it's aesthetically, you've got cables everywhere, or you're not seeing really, it's kind of a mess. The tables are kind of there. Microphones are all over the place. They already feel threatened by the room and don't want to use it. They want to be able to go in there into a room, push one button, join the meeting, and get the same experiences they would be getting at their laptop or desktop that they'd be getting inside of the meeting room. They want the rooms to be flexible. So one big thing that we've seen are people want to be able to go in and collaborate inside these rooms also. That's been kind of a shift where, you're kind of having these point-to-point calls, or you're having these video calls here. They want to be able to have, rooms that may be, certain flexible, or maybe the multi-purpose rooms, and they want to be able to manage that. Another one is secured by design. So keeping devices reliable and up to date. That's always been kind of a big push. If you're in the IT area or in the IT industry, it's like, hey, is facilities managing this room or is IT managing this room? And that's kind of that kind of shift is you're kind of seeing them combine where, facilities may have a budget, but so does IT. And they're trying to figure out, hey, how do we work together on who's managing and monitoring the rooms or who's supporting the rooms, as you're seeing that the rooms kind of take a shift from what used to be that facility side to now IT. And I'll go through some of this, and, I'm going to try to leave like 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes for questions. That I tend to get a lot of questions when we go over this. So around is maintaining consistent experiences with familiar, intuitive app built by Microsoft Teams. Microsoft has done a fantastic job at developing what the Microsoft Teams rooms look like, because it doesn't matter the devices. If you guys used to remember, the link room systems or the Skype room systems, it would kind of shift or change a little bit based off of, manufacturers. Since Microsoft has gone in, they've developed partnerships with these manufacturers, or Microsoft owns that. So Microsoft owns that interface. The manufacturers are allowed to bring in kind of their own, technologies that they've built into there, but Microsoft owns the interface. So it doesn't matter if it's a Logitech MTR, a Crestron, a Yealink, a Poly. They own that interface, so it doesn't matter around kind of hardware agnostic feel. And in doing so, it helps reduce learning curves. It helps provide a consistent Teams experience, and it allows them to get the update to new features because Microsoft owns it, so they can natively push out and certify the devices. So, and during that certification process, Microsoft then can push out firmware updates or software updates to each of those endpoints that are out there, which provides something that's a lot more seamless instead of having a bunch of different stuff inside of the room that you have to manually update per each manufacturer. Now it's kind of a one-stop shop for all of your meeting room and meeting experience areas. Help everyone be seen and heard with high quality audio and video. You're starting to see that more and more. People want to be able to have an experience on video and be able to see kind of a something that they would look at when they're watching TV at Netflix or Prime Video. That higher experience makes people pay attention. A lot of times when I'm working, I'm always on video, and I do that because you get a lot better response, and you can always kind of see people's reactions and kind of understand and get that feedback that's there. And if you guys can tell, I'm also using a nice mirrorless camera. So you do see that quality that's brought out, not just from that, but also from inside Teams. Before, during, and after meetings with fluid components, you can clearly see and engage in the conversation just like we're doing now. Allows people to ask questions, allows you to be able to, understand or to be able to empathize or sympathize with everyone that's there. Increase engagement with features for design. So wirelessly share any type of content. I don't know if you guys saw this, but here, I think just in the past week or two, Microsoft released the cast option, which has been something that's kind of been asked in the meeting rooms, where now you can just go ahead and wirelessly cast your screen with Bluetooth beaconing without having to be inside of a Teams meeting. That was kind of one of the bigger requests that was happening there is, hey, do I always have to join a Teams meeting in order to share content? And the answer was yes, but that has since changed. You can now cast inside of the Microsoft Teams meeting now. So Microsoft is really pushing to understand, a lot of the engagements inside of the Teams meetings and what that experience looks like. And they're taking that feedback that not just us partners give them, but also you as an end user out there, and putting that feedback in and trying to make this experience, whole. Raise hands without interrupting the speaker, being able to pin videos and content dynamically. So if you can also check, it gives you what you want your experience to be without affecting anybody else's. That is like one of my favorite features about Teams is that dynamics is, hey, maybe how I want to look at the content, or maybe how I want to interpret the content, and everybody else that's there in the meeting is how I want to see it. But they don't, I don't want to shift it for everybody else. And you can do that inside of Teams. Being able to use your phone, tablet, or companion device to enhance meeting experiences. If you've got, any type of Android or, Apple tablet out here, you can be inside of the meeting on your tablet along with, inside your desktop and maybe collaborating on one, or you've got your Surface out here and you're collaborating on it. So that's always, it's just being able to bring that features and those functionalities that's there. Cultivate in real time. So this is the one thing that came up was whiteboard and intelligent content capture. So if you haven't seen this is an awesome feature. Microsoft over here is taking that camera and your whiteboard and essentially creating you transparent so people can collaborate and see what's going on. You're not blocking the content that's there. It's using that intelligence inside of the whiteboards or using that intelligence inside of Teams to be able to provide this type of functionality. It's using AI processing in Teams to reframe it so you can view, links, you can view what's being written, objects, anything that's there in front of that whiteboard essentially kind of becomes invisible so you can collaborate back and forth. Then you can actually take it a step further. You can take that and be able to create that essentially a snapshot of that whiteboard and then drop it into a digital whiteboard. So you're going from an analog to a digital phase, and then you can have that content that's there and still be able to collaborate offline, which is, an amazing feature within itself. Is, hey, how do I take this analog data, put this into something that's digital that we can save and put somewhere, and then be able to come back to it. We're going to talk a little bit about flexibility. Devices that need of any size or type of room inside the MTR. So in the past couple of years, a lot of companies that I've worked with have been trying to figure out, how do we scale? How do we scale the rooms, or how do we understand each of these rooms, what goes in each of these rooms? Because the hardware has shifted, and so is the experience. What used to be able to drive, like the hardware would drive that room. So when you would go into any room, you were limited based off of what was in the room. Where you see now, the end users are really driving the meeting experience. The end users are being able to drive that, because we've kind of shifted what was done and from a hardware perspective. And in doing so, it's being able for allow to be able to come out and make that shift that's there. So when you're looking at devices or any types of rooms, Microsoft is taking these devices and said, hey, we want these to look at a small, medium, large, huddle, extra large space. And these are the devices, and these are the requirements that are there. Now, when I'm looking at multiple screen configurations or simplified deployments, they've made it to where it says, hey, we're going to set these standards that are here. These standards are going to be, we've got small, medium, large, extra large. And then we've got the, a camera, we've got a mic and speakers, and we've got, some custom solutions that are here. We've got our collaboration, which would be like your Surface Hub device. And we want you to be able to kit these and essentially, take your pick of, this is what I'd like to have over here. This is what I'd like to have over here. And in doing so, it makes it easier to manage and monitor these rooms, because you've gone in, you've been able to kit these rooms, been able to pick out, different factors or different use cases that you want based off how big the room is, how, if it's got glass in it, how many tables there are, what the use case is, and then put in a simplified either all-in-one device or a microphone, speaker, and camera combination, or multiple cameras inside of the room. And you'll be able to drive that experience based off those. It gives you a lot more of that flexibility and being able to drive that experience. So when we go in and we're taking a look and say, hey, we've got any size or type of room that's there, how do we get from, to this, to being able to scale this to 50 to 70 to 80 times? You're seeing a shift where we used to have these, kind of boxed in conference rooms. You're kind of seeing where, hey, we want more of the huddle, small and medium rooms, because we find a lot more productivity gets done in smaller groups. So we want to be able to utilize that in some of these huddle and small rooms, instead of having, 5, 6, 10 large conference rooms that are here. Let's be able to break this up and be able to scale this to where we can have multiple meetings and collaborate inside of a smaller room. And in doing so, they've got these modular, integrated, and all-in-one devices. They have created not just Teams as a platform, but Teams as different devices based off those use cases. Once again, we are driving what we're asking for. We're driving that meeting experience, and in doing so, we're trying to, we're catching up with what's being there around the hardware. You want to walk into a room and say, you've got a modular system, you've got a touch panel that control, and once again, it doesn't matter what manufacturer it is. You're being able to take that and use that everywhere, because nobody's trying to learn anything new. The workflow stays the same, which is extremely important. You've got your AV peripherals, speakers, mics, cameras. And if you look around here, you've got between your module and integrated, you're seeing a lot more of those integrated, where it's combined audio, video, display, or combined audio and video all in one device. You've also got all-in-one devices, what you're seeing there with the audio and video and display in a single unit with the camera. You've got Teams Room on Windows and Teams Room on Android, Meet and Present, and Meet and Present plus Co-Create. And you're seeing kind of that shift. Now, one thing I will bring up that we're also, kind of seeing with a lot of our clients is the questions around, Android versus Windows. What we've been working with, along with our manufacturers and vendors on this, and Microsoft, is everyone's aware of the chip shortage. So it's not necessarily the questions we're asking is, hey, if I want to come in, I want to be, scale a bunch of these rooms. It's, you know, how long is it going to be? When can we get equipment in? And you're going to start kind of, we're having these conversations around that. And what we're seeing is the chip makers on the Windows side are a lot further behind versus, teams on Android. Now, we would go in and kind of have these conversations with you because there is kind of functionality differences and some security differences around, do you have an Android policy in your organization? Or, let's talk about the updates or how you manage the Windows PCs. And that kind of goes into our conversation of really being able to drive, the security and being able to scale that and manage and monitoring of those rooms. But from an Android perspective, we're seeing that those units are a lot more available out there than what's on the Windows side. And I'm kind of going to pause here just for a minute to see if anyone has any questions.
So nothing in the chat, but if anybody has something that they want to be able to ask Brendan directly, go ahead and come off. Oh, here we go. Ryan got one. Any thoughts on the Asus devices, long-term support? They seem not to be support, or they do not seem to support TPM. Any thoughts on that?
That's a great question, Ryan. I'm assuming you're talking about the Crestron UC100s. Oh, and if Windows 11 requires TPM, yes. I can provide some additional thoughts around that. I can't confirm or deny anything with Crestron. There's still some ongoing conversations though around the UC100s and kind of what route they're trying to go. I can say if you look at a lot of the manufacturers, they've kind of looked at Dell, HP. You saw HP acquire Poly or Plantronics. So you're seeing kind of a shift around, where Microsoft's certifying some of those. But yeah, they do have some certified NUCs out there that you're probably going to start seeing that shift. I know it doesn't fully answer your question, but I know there's some stuff in the works to have that conversation. Can't confirm or deny anything. Anyone else? I've got about 30 slides, so I kind of just want to make sure as I'm zipping through some of this that any questions, if you see something that comes up.
Yeah, I'll make sure I pop into
Awesome.
if something comes up. So
perfect.
Go for it. All right.
So getting back into the budget and any workspace, the way we go and look at some of this is built also around the desk, your huddle, medium, large, meet, present, co-create, collaborate. We've developed these standards, and within those standards, it's coming in, looking at these different room stereotypes and being able to scale them. And not just like 1, 2, or 3, but it could be 5, 10, 15, 20. We want to go in, look at your rooms, classify each one of those rooms inside of its own swim lane, and then work with you on, preference of manufacturer, preference of use cases, because each of the manufacturers kind of do their own transitioning or experience, you could say, inside of there. And so working with you on that to give you a map. And within that map, you're going through and you're being able to say, hey, if this is a huddle room or this is a medium room, this is the kit, this is kit A or this is kit B. And you can just put them in here and be able to quickly budget, be able to go through and show, if you've got any type of adoption or training that's in there, and being able to give people access of saying, hey, what's your preference? Or this is what, these are what our options are. This is what we worked with our partner with. And this is how you can be able to scale these and provide that flexibility depending upon what you're working, what that environment is, whether it's, to have a collaborative environment that's a co-create, or to have a large or an extra large environment or a divisible room. Like you've got these set of standards, and these standards stay the same because the interface stays the same. So those workflows don't really shift or change, just the kind of the experience does inside of that room. But once again, because they're software-based codecs, that you don't have to do anything different around, unlocking or changing as, the different use cases come out, or as different functionality comes out, it automatically gets pushed out to the MTR. You don't have to go out and purchase anything different. that software is driving that experience along with your requests and kind of, how the end users are trying to drive that experience inside the room. So you're not having to add anything additional. We're going to go through a couple different spaces here around microarrays, cameras field of view, cable management. This is what, understanding some of these bigger spaces. So NPR, like your XXL or your executive rooms. These are some of the what we want to call more difficult rooms or custom rooms. When we were talking, when I was just saying about the small, medium, large, and huddle rooms, you have those, but everyone typically has a multi-purpose room, which is that NPR, or an executive room or an executive board room, where it tends to stand out. And so we'll go, we work with you on understanding, where the cameras are supposed to be. If one of my favorite things was back in the day, you get inside of these rooms and the cameras would be at the very top of the room, like looking down on the people. And I don't know where that came from, except for, you've got the camera technology that maybe couldn't, make that shift. But if you see when we're working with the rooms, we want the cameras to be right in front of you, because we want you to be able to see eye level and eye to eye. And if you look at some of what's coming around, like for Neat, for example, on Android, you can have multiple people in the room, and whether you're 6 feet tall or 5'5", or they'll actually bring you down and separate them out and then make everybody eye level, just because it provides a better experience. And it's a little stuff like that inside Microsoft Teams meetings that make all the difference in the world. Because it's being able to help people pay attention, being able to focus on what's there with front row, being able to understand the meeting chat, things like that. It just provides a better experience, because you want to be able to, once again, feel like you're there in person, but you're remote. And then in some of these room spaces where you've got cameras and microarrays, and camera field of view, we go through and take a look at that, because we want to be able to look at the acoustics or the lighting that's in the room. If you've got, a room full of windows, which is, the greatest thing to happen for acoustics is whenever, you're in these big buildings and there's windows everywhere. The lights. One of the funniest things ever is, I have these conversations and these clients want, like, hey, we want to put a projector in this room. And this was, you look at it years ago, where the worst thing you can do with a projector is add light, but the worst thing you can do with video is not have enough light. So it was kind of an oxymoron around, how do you do video, in a projection? And, we kind of go through that and understand what that looks like from, a Microsoft Teams room as the technology has shifted and changed. The future rooms. So some of you, I'm sure you've seen the dual screen experience with front row or LED walls with the next gen experience. So if you haven't seen what front row, Microsoft is trying to work through how to change the meeting room experience with, once again, dynamically. And it's shifting with layouts. And so they're seeing, hey, customers want to be able to have different layouts for different meetings. So maybe you're in an executive meeting and you just want to be able to have, the Brady Bunch view or a gallery view, because you want to be able to see everybody. But maybe you're in a project management meeting and you want to be able to have tasks on one side, you want to have content in one, and the chat on the left and the people down there at the bottom. That meeting room experience is changing based off those layouts. So Microsoft is making, additional strides and being able to provide this functionality and layouts in the room with, once again, without you having to change out any hardware, without you having to change out, different cameras or anything like that. You're being able to shift this room into a whole different experience based off of it being software driven and being able to shift based off that layout. So if you look at the bottom one, an LED wall with the next gen experience, that's a huge 140-inch LED wall there. I mean, a direct view LED, and if you look at that, that wide angle, being able to have that horseshoe of tables, it's kind of the shift where you're seeing, back when they didn't have the a wide, like at 16:9, your standard 4:3, and then you're used to seeing those black bars when you were first watching the movies in the early 2000s, late 1998, 99. You weren't used to it. But overall, it provided a better experience because you could see more from a field of view perspective. That's what you're seeing in the meeting rooms, is instead of having these bowling alley rooms with these tables and you're just looking down and you can only see a handful of people, and then anybody who tilts their head or moves, all of a sudden it just becomes a distraction. Why not provide that movie theater experience? Being able to have these wider rooms with these U-shaped tables or tables going all the way across, because the cameras and the technology can support it. They can have multiple cameras and they can be able to, go in and pick and choose. And then once they see that one person talking, it focuses on them as the presenter, and then still gives you this wide angle view or a separation of all the participants that are in the room. And it makes a big difference with what those meeting experiences are, because as a remote person, I want to feel like I'm talking to you one-on-one. Here's another example of a dual screen experience in a Surface Hub. Being able to have that collaboration. So you see dual screens on either side along with Surface Hubs on either side, be able to collaborate. It's being able to make that change in that experience inside of the room. No questions yet? Man, usually when I start getting in the front row, I usually get bombarded with a lot of questions. That's crazy.
No, I agree with that. Same thing with me, Brandon, when I'm having these conversations with anybody, They want it and customers are asking for it. But I think it's the biggest thing is that it's a fundamental change in how you set up rooms. So if you're not having a conversation with facilities and figuring out the better way, to your point, we don't want it to be, going down in 2 rows and somebody on the end is not in view and the person in front is, that kind of experience, or more like this. This is the way of that hybrid, and be able to make things to be easier for people who are in the conference room working with those who are not in the conference room. So absolutely.
Yeah. Surface Hub. So a lot of you have seen, if you haven't seen the Surface Hub, Surface 2S, it's an all-in-one device. The Surface Hub is a little different than an MTR. It actually runs on a different version of than the Windows MTR does, provide a different experience. It's still there to provide that collaboration, that co-creation, but also you can pair that Surface Hub with the MTR, and that provides an overall experience. No, there's no discount on an LED wall, unfortunately. But if you do have a way to get a discount on an LED wall, let me know and I'll send you my address. But for the Surface Hubs, it does provide that collaboration experience, because it pairs itself with the MTR and allowing it to act as one device that's there. So as soon as you join the MTR, it automatically joins the Surface Hub to the room. Room capacity notification with Teams panels. I'm sure a lot of you have seen a ton of information around Teams panels. Teams panels aren't just, and you'll see a lot more kind of shifting and changing around where Microsoft is going with the Teams panels. But with the Teams panels, you're actually logging into the same account as the room. The big benefit of that is you're pulling the information both back and forth. So when you want to talk about, how many people are in the room, being able to use the AI of counting people, be like, hey, there's 6 or 8 people in this room. The capacity is only here for 10 or 12. Being able to find a reserve nearby available rooms, or discreetly alert people, in the room that there's people waiting outside. That's using that same account and that information up in Azure, and be able to have that communication back and forth in room panels that you never had before. You had the ability to be able to, reserve a room, or to say, hey, this room is being utilized, but you never had the favorite feature, which would be like, hey, you got a group of people waiting outside the room. You're 5 minutes past your meeting. You should probably leave. Like, that's always been the biggest thing, is once you get people in rooms or you've got back-to-back meetings, it was always going over, and it was just like a domino effect of, by the time you get there, you're like, well, everybody's gone over like 20 minutes each time. And this notifies people, say, hey, there's people outside, and you pair it together with the room. And once again, it's adding some of those features, some of those requests, understanding what that experience looks like, and pairing it in with the MTR and using that. Flexibility to join meetings from other devices. If you haven't seen this, it's direct guest join. Microsoft has worked with Zoom and WebEx, the big three, with being able to join those third-party meetings from an MTR. it's a real quick enablement inside of your MTR with a radio button. And then you go in, you forward that meeting, and it opens the meeting up in WebRTC. So whether it's Zoom or WebEx, it's a WebRTC meeting, but it gives you the ability, though, to provide that embedded web experience and have a Zoom or a WebEx meeting on an MTR without any third-party involvement. So whether it's a CVI solution or anything like that, this provides just an overall third-party, nothing else added into the room experience with using the camera, mic, and speakers that are there inside the room for a WebEx or Zoom meeting. And there's three other companies out there that I think will be added, and by the end of the year.
Yeah, I saw Blue Jeans was one. I don't remember the other ones. Yep. They didn't stand out, but I know Blue Jeans is another one that a lot of companies are using as well. Yep. That you can also do the direct press join as on top of that.
Yes. Yeah. Blue Jeans was one, and then there's
Google Meet, or I forget the other one. I don't remember. It wasn't something that I would normally know. Mike, I don't think it was Google Meet, but let me double check on that. I'll see what's going on.
Yeah, there's another one. I'll remember what it is here in a minute.
Exactly. If you go back one slide,
yes, sir.
Brandon, there was. I hate when we do this. We got asterisks in there, right? Find and reserve nearby available Teams rooms. So Matt Berg was asking about that, and then discreetly alert people. So I believe those are features that are on the roadmap and coming soon.
Yeah. So yes, it is. With the panels, there's some functionality that will be coming to the panels. Yes, one was find and reserve nearby available Teams rooms, along with the alerts that I was discussing.
Yep. The knock. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So hopefully that answers your question, Matt. There's also a good one, but I think I want to leave this one for later on that Jeff Goddard had said. Because it's a little bit bigger conversation about starting to move from legacy devices to Teams native devices. How does that work? It's kind of a big thing because it also talks about what can you do now in the meantime conversation, right? So being able to use things like PepSic or other tools to be able to do that CVIP. So let's wait on that. And yeah, I'll double check. We'll double check on the other direct guest join stuff. So
perfect.
Go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah. Everybody's favorite in IT is the management and monitoring of the rooms. This is where you play that blame game back and forth between IT and facilities and having that conversation. The Microsoft Teams rooms they're AI driven, being able to automate it. This also goes into having conversations, not with just how do you manage your endpoints, but also with your security team, with being able to push out updates, being able to look at, if you're using Intune or, SCCM or Microsoft Teams Room Premium. So on some of this, you'll look at a couple different of the licenses that are there, which is Teams Room Standard versus Teams Room Premium. So if you're familiar with it, the Teams Room Standard license is what you want to apply to a Microsoft Teams Room, or the Teams Room Premium. The Teams Room Standard is $15 and the Teams Room Premium is $50. The Teams Room Standard gives you the phone system license, which is the ability to be able to, it gives you the ability to be able to dial out. Think of that as your cell phone. But if you want to be able to call out of it, you need to have a carrier. So whether it's going via your current PBX solution using direct routing or assigning it a calling plan, be able to dial out from there. And then it gives you the Intune license to be able to manage and monitor the device that's there, and it gives you the audio conferencing license. But with Premium gives you the Premium portal, which provides a ton of data and analytics and Power BI reports on the rooms and the experience, with being able to manage each peripheral and device, along with the integration in if you've got like an ITSM tool like ServiceNow. So it does provide that integration in with Snow that's there. And it is it's very robust, and it takes the Teams Admin Center, and it's kind of put that on steroids specifically for managing those devices. This is a screenshot right here of Teams Room Premium. So you can see it lists the incidents there, when it happened, the action that's there. And what's the greatest thing about this is the intelligence on the back end. So say it recognizes that there's an issue with the MTR, it'll go through, provide maybe a reboot in the middle of the night, double check the MTR to make sure everything rolled up correctly, fix itself, close out the ticket, then let you know that, hey, this issue's been resolved, this is when it was resolved, and this is what we did to do it. So it's whether you're working with Microsoft and a partner possibly on being able to manage those rooms. So they may notice that there's something going on with the rooms, and we'll be working on the back end before you even know about it. And Microsoft puts it all together and goes through and resolves that issue. And if it needs assistance, it'll reach out to a partner or to you on that point of contact saying, hey, we tried resolving the issue on the back end, we couldn't get it, can you go check a couple of things? And then it provides that alert, and then you get an update on your ticket. Are you making Teams rooms at the state?
Yeah, I think that was an internal conversation with Jeff and Mike, just so you know.
Okay. But yeah, so this is what the Teams Room portal looks like. So that's specifically for if you get the Teams Room premium licensing. Another thing around the premium licensing that it does is if you're managing via Intune, this actually takes over a lot of those updates. I'll go through a couple more here around different one. If you've seen some of these, let's answer the question about, Android devices versus the Windows space. Around the different manufacturers that we were kind of talking about on Dell, Logitech, Crestron, HP. Is Intune required to manage the updates? It depends on how you have how you're set up and configured. It's not required. If you don't do it, it'll just do your regular Windows 10. Like if you're not on the domain and it's just a device like a regular endpoint, it'll just follow regular Windows 10 updates that are there that you have set up from an individual. You don't have to manage it inside of Intune, but it is recommended. This is going over just the different devices once again around the Crestron Flex series, the Poly series, and some of the Yealink series that are here, just so you guys can see that these are how they're kitted together. And we work together with each of these vendors and manufacturers to provide that huddle to small, small to medium, medium to large, and you can see how it's there. Question, back to direct guest join. What current limitations are there during the meeting for WebEx and Zoom when using direct guest join? For instance, is the screen sharing available? There are some limitations once again. So when you look at direct guest join and you're trying to push that inside of an experience, direct guest join is very much it's not a premium experience, but it allows you to still have that. I don't think currently you can share content, but you can see content with direct guest join. That is on the roadmap to be able to share around on some of that. If you are looking for a more robust feature, that goes back to the conversation we were having earlier around having a CVI, whether it's PEXIP, PolyReal Connect, one of those solutions that does provide that interop inside for that SIP or H323, the SIP or H323 for connecting back and forth from the meetings. And then this goes back to HP Slice and the Lenovo solution. So with that being said, that's all I have currently. I wanted to leave time though to answer any questions, whether it was around Microsoft Teams Room Premium or anything specific around Microsoft Teams Rooms. I know there's a question up there around how do you get from point A to point B.
Yeah, that's one of them. I'm just glancing and see if there's anything else. So we mentioned about the Intune requirement. There is a couple different ways too with that, Zach, or Chris, I should say. If you are doing the MTR Premium subscription, device updates can also go through that. So you'd have to decide which one you would use. If you're using the standard Teams Room license, you can push things out, but it's not automated from the Teams admin console. So that's a possibility. But as far as managing the devices, Intune is definitely the route to go if you're actually managing those devices. Going back to Jeff Goddard. So if your organization is Teams first organization, but you have WebEx Cisco rooms, how would you start the process to evaluate the options to start moving away from Cisco rooms? we have Team Cisco integration, but it's not the best experience, right? So go ahead, Brandon. I'll let you start off on that one. That's there's many layers on that one.
So I get this all the time, Jeff, right now. A lot of clients that I'm working with is, hey, we are on Cisco. How do we, kind of make that jump? Because when you look at it, you're looking at it as a platform, right? So Cisco itself is a platform, Microsoft itself is a platform, and you want to be able to provide, that best experience. A lot of examples I give is if someone is tied into the Apple ecosystem. Why? It's because of the platform. If you're tied into the Android system, you get the best experience because it's a platform. So what we typically like to do is go in and work with you on what are the use cases, understand the stakeholders and reasonings behind, hey, we want to make the shift over to Microsoft Teams rooms. Now that could be, hey, we've only got a Cisco PBX that's there, but we use Teams for everything else for the collaboration side, but all of our rooms are, WebEx kit rooms. That could be one. And what we would like to do is we go in and try to pilot a Microsoft Teams room because you're already utilizing Teams. Now, what that's going to do is it's going to help increase that adoption that's there because the end users are already using Teams. And in doing so, it makes it a lot easier and a lot more efficient when you look at the adoption side of it. And then the other piece of it is the voice piece. So we would ask that, hey, this is great. If you're still using Cisco, why don't we bring in the voice side of it too and do something like direct routing? And that way you can use Teams for everything. And it's just using your backend infrastructure that's there. And then we start scaling some of those pilots of those rooms. And we start out small. So if you're ever looking to pilot inside of an organization, don't do an executive room. Don't do a multi-purpose room. Start small. Start with like a huddle room or a small room. That's where you're going to find your most success. If you start out with like a boardroom or a high touch point room, it typically you're going to get a lot more of, hey, I'm used to stuff doing, I'm used to the workflow going like this, not like this. And there was not a training or a success plan that was there. We tend to find that finding a smaller room, a huddle room or a small room that has some touch point, but not super high touch point, provides the best experience because it allows people to be able to come in and kind of start making that shift and gives them time to be able to get used to the Microsoft Teams room experience. And then you take that feedback and we tweak it from there. So we're going to understand what the feedback is, what they like, maybe what they didn't like, or maybe they want to look at, hey, what can we do with the medium-sized room or, the presentation or the collaboration piece of it.
Perfect. So then Michelle was mentioning too, do you have, Magenium specifically, do you actually have a physical location where you have the different types of rooms, different solutions that you guys do? Is this something you can do virtually, in person, if possible, or would you suggest going to the OEM manufacturers?
No, we have offices all around. We've got one in Eden Prairie. We've also have 24 other offices around the U.S. With one also in Chicago. But we've got 24 different offices. You can look on the AVI Systems and Magenium website, and you'll see kind of, where all our locations are. I would highly, highly recommend going to either one of our rooms or a partner room to go look at all the devices that are there because they're specifically set up to understand those use cases, right? So it's going to be a shift. And I think some of the Microsoft offices are updated. Yep. But I don't think all of them are. So I don't want to speak to which ones are or not.
Yeah, and that's a good point because I know the MTC here in Edina the 6th floor is getting a revamp, and I don't think they're open yet. So to ask the question or answer the question Jeff is saying, does the MTC have any open office hours to look at these? I don't think quite yet, Jeff, but I know that's on the radar as far as some of the things that they're trying to do. So they're trying to make these areas so you can kind of see the stuff to work, right? So you don't have to necessarily drive too far away to be able to get it. But for those here in Minnesota,
and I've done quite a few remote. So I've got a couple MTRs here at the house, an Android and a Windows-based one, and I do a lot of kind of remote showing. Hey, this is the functionality. This is what the experience looks like. Which has had a lot of positive response. If you don't have anywhere, or if you're not in a location to be able to, go into an office at all, then I've got everything here locally. I'm able to go through and show you kind of what that experience looks like.
Agreed. Yeah, and then Jeff continues. He says, "Can Fast Track help with this?" So unfortunately, that program, which was started 2 years ago, that has moved to partners. So that's where, Brandon and Magenium, that's where the OEM, specifically the hardware providers, they have scenarios or what they can do, solutions to be able to help. But really, I would say utilize a partner, talk to your Microsoft reps as well. They may be able to bring in some resources, but really the MTC piece, or I should say Fast Track piece, is not really a direct option for some of the things you're probably thinking, Jeff.
Yeah, we do with some of the a lot of those manufacturers with being able to provide certain equipment and the installation and configuration piece of it. So that is out there, just like Donald said, the partners.
Yep. And Matthew Berg, thank you for piping in for Ryan's experience. I mean, the whole experience, and I'm trying to see, I thought we had it documented, but I don't think we do. It is kind of limited to, as far as that experience when you're doing that direct guest join piece, you're limited to what is available through WebRTC from that particular company, right? And then we make that available within the Teams environment. So there is some things that, hopefully we're allowing everything to come through, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the case, right, Brandon?
That is correct. Like I said, there's little caveats, but remember, direct guest join, be able to provide an experience with audio and video, being able to utilize the room at no additional cost. And that's what you need to look at from there. If you want to be able to provide a different experience, that's where, we talk about CVI, but it's there to be able to provide, you're in a pinch, you need to forward the meeting. You're going to get that same experience, one button to push. There's nothing you've got to change.
Exactly. Great questions. Nice job, everybody. Anything else for Brandon before we let him go and switch over to Pat? All right.
Awesome.
Well, thank you, Brandon. Appreciate your taking the time today and kind of talking about Teams Room. It seems to be a hot topic, so appreciate your time and energy. And if anybody needs any more information about Magenium, please reach out to Brandon. We'll make sure that information is available. Thank you, sir.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. I think it's Pat's turn. Let's see if Pat will pop up here and can start displaying his deck. Well, hi there, Pat. Might have to unmute first.
The joys of when you share your screen and the other disappears. That's what we need to change here. So.
Yeah, that should be a feature request, I think.
Know someone? All right.
I may know a couple people. All right. Thank you, Pat.
Yep. Thank you. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. On, I guess, our one day of spring that we had moving directly into summer this week here. So my name is Pat Peterson. I'll go through a quick introduction of myself for us. But for the second half of the session today, we're going to focus in on task management in Microsoft 365. With this, there's a few different options out there. So what I hope you capture for today is just some of the different ways that you can use a more modern approach to task management. So if you're someone that's still writing tasks down, or maybe you're using a third-party app to manage your tasks, some of these will certainly help. So when we take a look here for ourselves, I'm a manager with RSM on the Modern Work team. I focus in on everything Microsoft 365. I've been a Microsoft certified trainer now for over 10 years. I do own and drive a 1975 AMC Pacer, so there it is on the video behind me. It's currently still tucked away in the garage. Haven't pulled it out this year. But if you do need to get a hold of me or reach out to me, it looks like I have a typo. I don't have 2 periods before, but certainly on Twitter or LinkedIn work as well. So let's go ahead. Let's dive into the idea of tasks and more or less what Microsoft 365 has available. So with that, there's, something I always like to start out with here is when you think about separating out the idea of what a task is versus what an ask is, and how do you take something from an ask and turn it into a task? You got to be very careful saying that. But essentially the idea here is a lot of times you get sent messages. Maybe you're sent an email. Maybe you're, added to a comment inside of a Word document. And really, those are asks for something. They're asking for something like review this or something of that nature. They're not necessarily a task yet, right? So oftentimes the asks go unnoticed, right? You read them, you look at them, but then you don't take any action on that specific item. I know I'm guilty of that. If somebody sends me a Teams message, I might look at it and then quickly it's at the bottom of the screen and I may never see it again, right? Unless the person brings it back up to the top. So today what we're going to focus in on is how do we take some of those items that are asks and move them into tasks. Also, the other idea, obviously, is we have directed asks. That's the @mention. That's become much more popular. We've seen it here across our chat inside of Teams, for this meeting. But then certainly, I mean, it doesn't go a day go by that I don't have an email that's got an @mention there. And again, what that really does is draws a little bit more attention than just to simply, hey, Pat, look at this, right? It brings a little bit more attention to that item. And then, of course, the task is really the idea of a start and an end date, right? Just like a project. Projects have start and end dates. Tasks are certainly some of those items as well. They have a specific due date. Maybe there's a predecessor or successor, and we'll explore some of those functions as well and what that looks like from a Microsoft 365 mechanism. So with that here, as we take a look, this is one, there's pillars of modern work for us. And what I really want to focus in on is the right-hand side. So when you think about being, working today, there's a lot of things being thrown at you, right? I remember when I was a high school teacher back in the early 2000s, and it was pretty simple. Simple for the fact of being a teacher, I should say. But it was pretty easy, right? I simply had to just show up. I did my work at work. I didn't have to worry about doing it at home. I didn't have to worry about the blended of being, when am I done working? When am I not? I didn't have international people to work with, right? And so for here, when we think about it, over on the right-hand side, this is really the key items for us, right? This is really what makes us feel good. Are we healthy with our boundaries? Are we working successfully? Are we stopping when we need to stop? Are we starting when we should start? Or are we immediately on our phone working in the morning? And then the other piece, are we honest with what we're doing? We said we were going to do it. Did we do it, right? Nothing, I'll admit that if somebody sends me a message and I forget to reply, although I understand it's just a human nature thing to sometimes forget, sometimes I feel bad. Most of the time, I brush it off and realize, it's a mistake or something of that nature. But there's, maybe there's times that you get asked something and you just forget about it. And so certainly from there, it makes you feel, not as healthy. And maybe you need to figure out if you need to come up with some sort of lie to cover up for honesty aspect of it. So those are the key outcomes here of work. And so when we think about it in a different view itself, obviously the fulfillment portion, the professional security that if I'm doing good work, I'm going to have a job, I can go on and maybe move to another organization altogether itself. So again, when you think about it, don't think about, across the entire ecosystem of Microsoft 365, really just focusing on, all right, what am I doing? Where are my tasks at today? So let's take a step back in time, right? So I'm one of these, I'm a big reflection person. I like to reflect in terms of where things were and how things functioned and how things operated before. If I take a look at where items are at today in terms of technology, obviously you have your mobile device, your phone is so powerful. It does more than just a phone, yet we still call it a phone. And then you have, back 20 years ago, it wasn't as common for people to have cell phones. And 30 years ago, your first cell phone might have been like a Nokia 5120 series that you could play Snake or Nibbles on. Maybe you could even replace the faceplates and the battery covers as well. So how did you manage tasks, or how are you managing tasks today? There's no right way to manage tasks, right? It's whatever works best for you. But when I think about how managing tasks, I use Post-it notes. I still use a lot of Post-it notes. Here's my problem with Post-it notes. If I'm in that hybrid work environment that was just talked about, and I decide I need to go into the office, do I remember to bring the stack of Post-it notes that are on my monitor here for us to keep track of? No, right? They don't travel well. They don't travel well. We have legal pads, right? it's not uncommon to all of a sudden see a yellow legal pad or a folder or portfolio, padfolio come out and people start writing things down. You have the paper, the paper planner, right? That's the old-fashioned concept of on this day I do this, on this day I do that, right? They still give those out in school for kids, but when you think about it, when was the last time you actually kept that up to date? You have your SharePoint list, right? Kind of that first evolution, and some could argue and say it's coming back that way too. Honestly, I don't think any of these have ever died. They all have their advantages and they all have their disadvantages. You have Microsoft Project, you have tasks in Outlook, and then you have the ever popular Microsoft Excel. I mean, that right there should have like a crown on it, like flashing lights like you're in Vegas. Everyone loves Excel. A lot of organizations use it. Some people use it, right, to manage your own tasks. And the one that's missing out here is the one that I think I'm really good at. And then my wife constantly reminds me I'm not good at, is keeping them up in my head, right? Like, oh, I'm going to do this, and then I forget about it, right? I don't remember. And so when you think about how you've managed tasks itself, there's a whole bunch of different ways to think about them, right? There's a lot of different tools you can use. You can buy third-party applications that are out there. But the struggle that I have is there's not one of these on this that works across multiple devices or wherever I'm working or whatever I'm working on, right? And so that's what we're going to showcase here a little bit later is with inside of the Microsoft 365 ecosystem, how do I keep track of all those together? So with that here, as we take a look, we go ahead and switch to our next slide here. Some stats. Everyone loves to look at stats in terms of why should they care, right? So this was a study out there a couple years ago. 91% of people crave modern technology solutions. 10% installed some sort of project management or signed up for some sort of project management task management tool without IT approval. I'm sure more than 10% of people on this call have certainly gone out and signed up for a trial of Rike or Trello or Smartsheet, maybe installed an app on your phone, right? So you've used a lot of those mechanisms as well. So let's take a look at what that ecosystem of Microsoft 365 has, right? And so when we see this for ourselves, oh, Jeff, you're asking a question I don't know the answer to. Any word on task for GCC? I have not, I don't monitor that roadmap at all on my end. So sorry, I am able to spend most of my time in the commercial tenant. So unfortunately, I do not know that answer. If anyone else knows, feel free to look at the chat. So here when we're taking a look, we have this idea of tasks, right? And if I think of my system, my ecosystem here today, it is all about Microsoft Teams, right? Anything I can put into Microsoft Teams, that is what I look at first. That is where people know to get a hold of me. That is how I attend meetings, right? That is where everything is located. It's like a browser on steroids that allows me to have all these shortcuts to things. And the experience is the same whether I'm on my mobile device, whether I'm on a tablet, whether I'm on my computer. So when we think about this, now we have Teams as like that ecosystem. That's like the teddy bear that we're all hugging and holding on to, right? And so when we separate them out, we have our personal side, which is the left-hand side. And then we have our professional or our work side here on the right-hand side. Appreciate that, Jeff. Yes. I did learn a lot about GCC High direct routing experience if you're interested in that. So I could share that and the licensing of that. But unfortunately, from a task side of it, I haven't gone into that well yet. So here, when we take a look, we have obviously, like I said, our personal side on the left-hand side here. So when we think about personal task management, this is when you might use other tools, right, for personal. Then we have on the right-hand side, we have that work or that enterprise, the shared tasks. Could you use those all individually? Absolutely, right? But they involve other people. And so when we think about those for us, we really have two areas. We have Planner and we have Microsoft To Do. Microsoft To Do is a growing application. In fact, it's coming. You're seeing it more prevalent. It's being included in on Outlook and in future versions of Outlook in the future. If you're not using Microsoft To Do, hopefully today you at least download it or try it or look at it on your own end. Then you have Microsoft Planner on the right-hand side. Been around for a while, right? But the idea behind it is it's a shared workspace for us to manage our tasks in there. And then the other component here is we have this Power Automate component, right? How do I use Power Automate maybe to copy or move tasks back and forth? And we'll talk about that here a little bit later, because one of the main components, like I said, was taking that ask and turning it into a task. And so that's an entire ecosystem out there for us. Thanks, Michelle. All right. So let's talk about kind of three themes here. The first one is coherence. So when we think about it, this is the idea of why is this important, right? This is the same look and feel across every experience. If that doesn't summarize those updates that we've all been getting to our Office applications or Office 365 Online or Microsoft 365 Online, the portal, the mobile apps, right? It's that same experience. That search bar across the top, although it was a pain the first time it moved in Outlook from down here to up here, it allowed for that same experience across all applications. Then we also have kind of the intelligence side of it, right? So when we think about how can we use intelligence to assist in prioritizing, right? Where's that artificial intelligence? It's not quite there yet. But again, when we get them all in one useful area, then that's when we can move into the intelligence area. And then the last one, of course, is the integration. So when we think about the integration aspect of it, how can we integrate those items together so that experience is the same? Today, we're going to talk about how I can create a task in OneNote, assign it an Outlook flag, and then easily see it inside of Microsoft To Do by way of Outlook tasks. If you've never seen that before, been exposed to that, that's pretty neat to actually be able to see that I can use any tool out there. And as long as I understand the limitations or understand the process flow, then I'm in good shape. So what works and what doesn't from a syncing aspect of it? I always like to have a summary here for us. So when I say synced, I am saying that you're going to be, your socks are going to be blown off here when you see how that process works, right? So you have your flagged emails. If you're an email flagger, that's important. You flag the emails for follow-up. If you didn't know that, they add them as an Outlook task, which then makes them show up as Microsoft To Do, which To Do tasks, of course, are synced. You have planner tasks, and then you have OneNote as long as it's Outlook tagged. What is not synced, right? If you use Loop or Fluid Task List, those aren't showing up yet. Yes, you receive an email notification. Same with tasks assigned in Office applications, but they don't show up in your task list or in Microsoft To Do. You also have OneNote on there. The OneNote To Do tag is the checkbox, not the flag. And so that's where the difference lies in there for us. All right. Let's take a look at some key task management endpoints for us. We have To Do and Planner. And we'll see these much more in depth a little bit later. But what I wanted to show you here is Microsoft To Do. It is a single application. It's browser-based as well. It's a mobile app. And it allows you to more or less see all the tasks and things around you so you can focus, right? And you can do something. And if you ever use the Viva Insights virtual commute, I think I said that right, the virtual commute, it will actually ask you to add a task at the end, right? What was one thing that you wanted to get done today that you didn't get done? The other aspect that I really like about To Do is the ability to create lists and share it with other people, right? So if I think about being in an office, that was really nice is that I could walk around to somebody's desk or office area, and I could go and talk to them, and then they might write a task on their whiteboard, right? They would write it down. Now when I'm, when over the last 2 years, when everyone's working remote, somebody says, hey, Pat, can you look at this or do this? I don't have a whiteboard for me to write things down. And then there comes the sticky notes or the pieces of paper. And I'm going to be honest with you, those Post-it notes and sticky notes and pieces of paper work really, really good until you need them and you're not home, right? some of you are probably nodding at home right now with that, even if you go to a coffee shop or something, and you don't bring them with you. The other aspect that I like about the idea of tasks is it allows you to create specific tasks and break them down with checklists. So if I think about how I create like a personal to-do list, I might say like, go to the post office, buy stamps, put the stamp on the letter, right? It's more of a checklist option here as well. And then the other component here is, of course, the idea of sharing those lists together with other people. So like I said, you might walk around to other people's desks in the past and you put it on their whiteboard in their office or in their space. What I really like is you can use this idea of shared lists to share with other people. And so that's one of the components that I really enjoy, as well as to create a list, share it with somebody else, and then you can collaborate on that list as well. I'm just reading the chat here. All right, it looks like it's been posted here as well. All right, I think I'm good. I can't believe Don didn't think of GoToMeeting. How many hours of your life, Don, did you use using GoToTraining? It's $1 million question.
Well, there is that. I did have that, so you're right.
You should. We would have had to go back a decade, though, right?
Easy, if not more.
Funny. All right. Then we have Microsoft Planner. So when we think about Microsoft Planner, that's the idea of shared lists, right? That's the concept of I give everyone a bunch of Post-it notes and I say, go put them on the wall. And when you put them on the wall, we're arranging them or organizing them in some sort of bucket area for us. And so that's where we can, use that to control and plan items out. The nice thing about all these is it takes really little effort to deploy. It's more of an information. Once you know what's out there, then it becomes an informational area for you to keep track of and let people know and be aware of what's out there. All right. My favorite part here, let's go ahead and let's get into the demo side of the world. So with ourselves here, let's go ahead and let's start with coming into Outlook first of all. So welcome to Outlook. This is a demo environment. Nothing too crazy happens here for us. This is the browser version, but if I was using Outlook locally on my desktop, you would see a similar experience as well. So when we take a look at this, one of the components that I have available for me is you'll notice across the top portion here, I opened up the to-do bar or the My Day tab or bar. Remember Outlook, like years ago, used to have the My Day view that would show up? It's that. So in this case of it, if I have the My Day portion here, I do have the ability to go ahead and, more or less drag and drop items as either a task or as a calendar appointment. Yes, you can do that on the desktop application as well. The desktop application is available for you. Essentially, if you didn't know this, here's your news flash. You can take an email and drag it to the calendar icon, to the task icon, to the contacts icon on your local Outlook, and it will create an item with that information. So I'll say that one more time. Outlook locally on your computer, if you drag to one of the appropriate calendar, tasks, contacts, it will go ahead and create that item for you as well. So in this case here, like I said, I can go ahead and drag that over and create that as a task. Notice I have it here called Mention You in Task, and then I have a few other ones for us that are out there that we're going to see a little bit later. This is using Microsoft To Do. Microsoft To Do is available, obviously, across the top. It's also available over here on the left-hand side of my screen. And if I did show you on my desktop, there's also a Windows app or an app you can download from any app store to go ahead and have that available also. So when I think about this, this is really a nice way for me to actually integrate and bring those items together relatively easy and quick. Now, the next item that I'm going to talk about is, all right, that's how I showed you how to take an ask in Outlook and move it into a task. What about an ask inside of Microsoft Teams? With that, if I'm inside of Microsoft Teams here, let me go ahead and pull one of these here real quickly. So let's say I need to make this into a specific task now. I can choose the more actions options and choose to create a task as well. And there are additional actions created here for you. Other actions may be turned into a planner task, or maybe, send an email. Something of that nature is all available for you. Those are all Power Automate or Flow items. I'll go ahead and create a task here for us. And when I do that, I have the ability to choose what does that task say, right? So I can say, where do I want that task created? Keep in mind, this is where I can have it created in a shared list, or I can choose to have it created in a Microsoft plan. And we'll see those as well here in the planner side. I also have the ability to set a due date. I always recommend, I wish that this would automatically populate a due date for me that I could adjust, because if tasks don't have a due date, then I never think I need to do them. So I'm a big fan of making sure you add in a due date. It is Friday the 13th this week, so I'm going to say the 12th. And I'll go ahead and click on Add Task. Now, when I did that, what happened, right? Where did those two things go? How do I find them? Where do I look at them? That's where I can go ahead and jump into the Microsoft To-Do area. Like I said, Microsoft To-Do is available in a couple different areas. It's available over here on the left-hand side of the screen. I could click on To-Do there. I can click on the app launcher in the upper left-hand corner, and I can go to To-Do as well. And then I could, of course, just type in tasks.outlook.com and get there also. So here I am, Microsoft To-Do. If you use the mobile app, it looks similar to this. If you use the desktop app, it looks identical to this, right? There's a lot of similarities between these. Now, when I see this, you'll notice automatically something happened, right? You might have seen that plan go ahead and synchronize. That's the process working here in the background as well. So in this case, this is where I can go ahead and come into the appropriate areas. And if I click on planned, you'll notice here's my different tasks, right? Keep in mind, this was the one I just created for Thursday, right? That says demo in progress. This is the one that's, that I just created. With that as well here, I can go ahead and mark these as being complete, right? Because I already did that. I don't know if you heard, but there's a nice little chime in the background, so that always makes me feel good. So I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, I did that one for tomorrow too. And then I have my presentation. I'll go ahead and say, yeah, I did that as well. We'll add more to it here for us to take a look at. Those are items that are planned, right? Those are planned. I was planning to do those. Then I have other areas, right? I have a My Day area. My Day is really the idea of tasks that you have that you need to follow up on, or kind of your day list. So this would be no different than you creating a list for your home and maybe saying, here's what I'm going to accomplish today versus here's what I'm going to do tomorrow, right? This is where I can go ahead and assign it to my day. Now, in this case of it, notice when I click on my day is empty because I'm a pro, or this is a demo account, so I'm good with that. I do have the ability to use suggestions, so that's the suggestions that's bringing in. It's just telling me all the tasks I don't have done, so not quite sure how suggestion that is. But I do have the ability to go ahead and add it to my day. Now, what am I doing that if I add it to my day? Nothing other than basically adding more metadata or a view to that item, right? It allows me to see it there as well. I can mark something as important. So if I go ahead and click on important here for me, I can add in a task there. Or if I flag or star an item, that will also go ahead and mark it as being important. Task planned here, obviously those are ones that have a due date assigned to them, assigned to me. We'll see that a little bit later with Microsoft Planner. This right here is worth the price of admission today. If you're someone that flags emails like myself and then you forget about them, this will actually show you all of your flagged emails. So what I would recommend is that when you do that, it's going to look at everything in your inbox. I mean, everything in your inbox. Remember that email that you flagged that you forgot to mark saying completed, 18 months ago, and now it's filed away in some folder, or you archived it? Or if you're someone that doesn't believe in that and you have a mailbox size of, 25,000 items, it's at the bottom of that. This idea of flagged email is a really good way for you to see, all right, what are all my things that I need to get done? Where are my asks? And now I can turn them into a task, right? I can go ahead and say, yeah, this I actually need to do a few things. I need to, contact ABC. And then I need to do another thing. I need to, maybe send invoice, whatever. So I can add different checklists here, right? And so by doing that, what you're seeing is that checklist is now, I'd added it twice for me. Let me go ahead and take that second step away here. I had this problem on Friday, only in this demo tenant, that it duplicated everything that I did. So, all right. I do have an identical twin brother, so maybe it was feeding off of that. It was like Pat can do double the work because he's got another person that looks like him. All right. Hopefully you're laughing a little bit. We also have the ability to add to my day as well here. So Pete said something great about that. Great for making micro commitments. Yeah, it makes you feel really good, right? Like, hey, I did that, right? I can set a reminder. So, with that, I can go ahead and do a reminder and say, you know what, you should remind me later today for it. And again, I'm using the browser version, so it's going to need to send a notification that way. If you're using the desktop version, much better experience for us. And then the ever popular repeat. Now, I don't think you'd ever repeat a flagged email aspect of it, but think of those tasks that you ever have to do that, sometimes you forget about. I'm working with a client now that's deploying a contact center, and the enterprise application loses its token every 40 days. So one of the solutions is let's create a task and assign you a task. So every month you get a reminder that says, go and grab the updated token. So anyways, that's just the idea of a repeating task. And then of course I can do different colors and categories, much like you can from Outlook. I can add in a file. And then notice I have the ability or information here of that Outlook item here for us. I can jump in the tasks. So notice here some of the different tasks that are out there. Now keep in mind, this was the one that I just brought over at the beginning of our session. So this is where I can go ahead and mark that as being complete. That was that email that I dragged over into the task area. And then at the bottom portion of my screen, this is where I can go ahead and start to set up different lists of information. We'll come back to this area here in just a moment. But what I wanted to at least show you a little bit was this idea of tasks and using Microsoft To Do to really help you out. The last thing I want to make a quick mention for is if you are on the home screen of an item, you do have the ability to add an item to your to-do task as well for you by clicking on the ellipsis or three dots. Go ahead, come into the add to, and then you can also add to Microsoft To Do. So you're starting to see that really boil up and see a lot of that information and see all the assignment of tasks in one spot. All right. Let's switch to one of my favorite products here real quickly, Microsoft OneNote. All right. Dun, dun, dun. So here's Microsoft OneNote. Oh, nice. Thank you. Here's Microsoft OneNote. So when you start to see this, here is my tasks that I needed to do as part of Microsoft OneNote. I will admit, I treated this as a little bit of a cooking demo to make sure that it showed up and worked successfully here for us while Brandon was talking. I'm going to go ahead and just create a new task here real quick, and I'll just say live demo. And then you'll notice across the top portion of the screen, you have the ability for Outlook tasks. Now, keep in mind, this is not to-do tag. To-do tag is really just no different than a checkbox, if you will. Outlook tasks is where it's going to integrate with the Outlook on your local machine and then ultimately sync up into Microsoft To Do. Where that doesn't work great is if you use multiple accounts like I do, right? And so I'm going to show you where this shows up in the Microsoft To Do app for us, but it's not going to make it into that demo environment because it's a separate login, if you will. So in this case of it, let's go ahead and let's say that this live demo is due tomorrow. So you'll see a few different tasks. First one, attend the session. Second one, learn how to share. That's pointed directly to somebody that had trouble sharing at the beginning of the meeting. Then we had hybrid meetings, and now we're on the live demo, right? So these are our tasks that I can go ahead and get done. Now, what this is doing in the back end is it's essentially going through Outlook it is then putting it in Outlook in the task area, but then it's also synchronizing it to Microsoft To Do. So let's take a look at Microsoft To Do locally here. Better be careful. Don's going to come over and egg my house if I keep it up. All right. So here's my Microsoft To Do items. Okay. Now keep in mind, here are my tasks and my items. This is my work environment. So I'm going to keep you all within inside of the task area. I won't bore you with the 17 emails that I have to get back to, or the 25 tasks that are planned in a variety of different stages. With this here, this is where I have the ability to see my tasks. Now I'm going to go ahead and sync just to see if it can come quicker. There we go. Look at that. Just like it's supposed to. There's my live demo, right? That was the one I just created. Now keep in mind, I created that in OneNote, right? I created it in OneNote and it made it all the way over here. So if you're someone that loves using tasks in Microsoft OneNote, you can continue to do that, right? You can continue to create your tasks. They will show up here inside of your task area or your task bucket. With that, I'll go ahead and mark a few of these as complete, just so that they're done or completed for me. You'll notice one of the key items over here on the left-hand side of the screen that I really like about using it is some of the shared list aspect here. So if you're someone that's a big shared list fan, or you work together with a group of people, this is a really good use of that. And so what you can do is you can create a list or a to-do list, and then essentially share that to one or two or how many other people you want. And from there, then you have that task list available for you. What is really nice about that, again, is that if you're invited, you can manage it, you can add to it. And so I use this for a lot of the people that I work closely with together, so that way they can, keep track of tasks. They can assign me a task. Maybe there's something I need to do or an approval I need to do. And so this is a nice way of getting that ask out of the rest of the noise and making it all directly into something visually that I see. All right. And magic. Anyone recognize what happened here? I feel like I should have saved that for the end for a mic drop. Anyways, what you saw is that I completed a task inside of Microsoft To Do. It did its magical thing and came back into Microsoft OneNote, right? So it automatically went ahead and came back. And so that's a key, kind of a key, neat feature to think about here for you to use along the way. So if you are an Outlook task user, or OneNote task user rather, you can continue to do that. If you are someone when you have a if you are someone that uses Outlook tasks, I'm not showing them or showcasing them, frankly, because they've been around for forever. But all of your tasks that you create also show up on that OneNote, your Outlook tasks as well. Question from Pete: when would you recommend using a shared task list versus a planner board? And just when the group creation is turned off. Yes, group creation is turned off. I recommend, I think of Microsoft planner boards, and I know some of you on this call would disagree with me. So that's the beauty of kind of the environment we're in as well. When someone is using a planner board, I see that as more of like a group activity, or more than one person involved, or more than one other person involved. If you looked at those groups themselves, it's really just, myself and one other person, right? It would be too much to have a planner board for us. So that's where I would recommend, moving into a shared task list instead. But with that, the no recycle bin in planner is always a difficult thing as well. And so that's one that's a sticking point for some people. But I see planner as like a group or a bigger team like environment, versus if it's one or other. I treat like Microsoft To Do as like OneDrive, right? Where I could share that file with the entire organization, but just because I can doesn't mean I should, right? And so that's where I treat shared lists as that OneDrive type of environment.
Yeah, and I think the other thing actually I was going to point out though is if you think about the fact that they have group creation turned off, that means a planner board is not even available to them.
Correct.
So they would default, if they wanted to do from a shared perspective, a shared task list, or if Microsoft List is available, using that, right? So those types of things to be able to organize to that point.
Thanks, Don. No, you're right. If groups are turned off, then you're kind of limited, right? So you got to do that.
Very much so.
Yeah, and then that's where you'd see probably the growth of you know, an individual shared list or an individual Microsoft list, you know, tied to someone's OneDrive. Looks like Jeff has his hand raised.
Hey, Pat, correct me if I'm wrong, but a shared to-do list doesn't it doesn't let people, you can't assign tasks within to-do to multiple people like you can in Planner. If I share a list, it's like I shared a grocery list with my family. They can all see what's on there and they can add things to it, but it's really not an assigned. It's not assigned to anybody because it's just a shared task list. Where if you want to have assigned tasks in specific, you'd want it in Planner, right?
Yes. So you can only actually, let me just test that out real quick. I don't remember if you can assign to more than one person.
In Planner, you can. I don't think you can in To Do.
So here, this is a shared list. I would is there only 2 other people in here though? Myself and Anthony, of course. I don't have any list that has more than 2 people in it, so I can't tell you.
But try to create a task and assign it to Anthony.
They would have
one of those
that though, I think. So if I come in here, assign to.
There is an assign to. See, that's new. I hadn't seen that yet.
So I can assign it to Anthony, but I don't. Well, I guess I could assign it to both of me, or both. Yeah, one or the other. It looks like.
So I think that's new. So that's, you know, I learned another thing today. So I didn't know that you could assign under the shared list wasn't in there before. At least it definitely isn't in there in just a general task, right?
It is not in there in a general task. It would need to be a shared task, and they would need to, you know, like I said, be invited or shared to the list in order to have access to that list.
Thank you.
Yep. And then what did Pete say? If you type @ mention it, it says. We haven't gotten in the Planner yet, so I'm going to get back to that. Oh, and then does it say here that you can mention someone as well with that? Oh, yeah, down right at the bottom. We just have to read, guys. Right there. You don't even have to click the assign to. You just have to read it. That's where it is. So anyways, like I said, I treat that as really a one-to-one, or like how I treat OneDrive, right? One person owning it, and then I'm sharing it with 1 or 2 other people for it. But that's how I treat it, right? Could you build that out and make that be more enterprise-wide? Absolutely. But this is not, in my opinion, it's not the tool to do that with. All right. I've never tried to assign it to more than 1 person. So that was, Jeff, thanks for challenging on that. All right. So with that here, obviously we saw the idea of taking a task from OneNote, moving it into To Do. We saw the task of taking something from Outlook, assigning it as a task and moving it into Microsoft To Do. And then we obviously saw Microsoft To Do in the browser as well as in the desktop application for you to see that with some of the pros and cons on that. So let's go ahead and let's talk about, you know, more or less our next portion of things, and we will come back to a demo. I'm a huge fan of demoing things out. So when we think about it, obviously we have Microsoft Teams as well for us to take a look at. And so this is where we can start to use tasks by Planner and To Do inside of Microsoft Teams. There is some items that are missing, right? Flagged emails don't show up, but any planned tasks do, whether they're coming from Microsoft Teams. We also have the ability, obviously, to create tasks like I showed you, of creating tasks directly from a item, I should say, to bring those over. So let's go ahead and let's switch gears into Microsoft Planner, or more or less Microsoft Teams for us. So I'm going to actually come into Teams here real quickly. And I'm going to jump into the Teams area for us. And I'm just going to jump to this chat, channels, and apps area. I'm going to click on the Planner tab. So this is a Microsoft plan, obviously added to a tab inside of Teams. Hopefully, you know that this doesn't have to be here. It could also be, just inside of Planner as well, or independent. With that, though, let's go ahead and let's talk about some of those pieces, right? So when I create a task here, what are the differences, or what does this allow me to do? I have the ability to create a task. And of course, I can go ahead and enter in a task name. I'll just say MN365 user group. Set a due date here of saying today. Actually, I'm going to do it as yesterday just so we can see what an overdue task looks like. I'll go ahead and assign this, and keep in mind this is where I can assign to multiple people if I choose along the way. And then I'll go ahead and click on add task. Now, when I do that here, there's some items that I can click on and see a little bit further, right? I have the task that's out there. Yes, we're receiving emails that there's a task been assigned to you. This is where you can start to control that. Now, keep in mind, Microsoft Planner is a really good task management tool, or a task kind of aggregation tool. There are, two things, in my opinion, that are really game changers that are missing from Microsoft Planner, which would require you to look at either Microsoft Project, a tool like Smartsheets, a tool like Wrike, one of those other third-party applications. The two pieces that are missing here from a task management, in my opinion, are the predecessors and successors. So what needs to happen next? Yes, I can arrange these in a specific order. I could say do this first, second, third. I could put numbers in there. I certainly could, but there's no work breakdown structure. The other piece that's missing from Microsoft Planner is kind of that resource alignment. So if you're someone that uses a dedicated project management tool, you're alerted or notified, or there's some visual cue when you're assigning a task that says, hey, Pat can't take anymore. He's over allocated, right? And so that's where you're missing some of those items out there for it. So in this case here, there's obviously some items that I can include. I can change what bucket it's in. I can add a label. I can mark the progress difference. So I'll go ahead and say that this one's, in progress. I can add notes. I can add checklists like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can add attachments. I can add a comment like working on it. And anyone from a SharePoint on-prem day used to see that message a lot back in the 2013 timeframe. So in this case, obviously, I have that all there for me. I can see it. I can easily make changes to that item. It's been called out once in the chat area that there's no delete, or there's no recycle bin. So if somebody does delete a task, there's no really way for you to recover that task at this time. But what is nice about this is that if I needed to move it into a different bucket, I could, right? I could move it out to the roll out to early adopters phase for me to be able to move it into that area. I could say, you know what, it needs to happen the second in row. So you get the idea that you can arrange this. How I like to describe of this is, if I gave all of you sticky notes or Post-it notes in a whiteboard, and I said, put all of your tasks in the appropriate whiteboard area, that's where you'd be able to control that and be able to see that. All right. Chad said, found the link to a card and another card. Add attachment is a handy item for dependencies. So add attachment, and then you can do from a link. Is that what you're referring to, Chad? I believe the link's there. Again, it's a little, soft link, if you will, right? It's a link to it, but it's not forcing you to do something first. It's a good tip, though. Thank you. All right. Correct. Yeah. So Chris's piece, sorry, I wasn't looking at the chat here for us. My bad. Where did I miss here? I think I'm at Pete's review. Jeff, I think we're good. Okay. Pete's. Nope. Hashtags. I think we're good. Just back and forth for us. And Chris's point, now you're into Project for the Web. Yeah, Project for the Web is good. I would say today I wasn't planning on going over that for us, but maybe as a follow-up session or in a few months, if there's somebody that wants to volunteer, I think that that's a good session to go into in terms of what the Microsoft solutions look like in the web.
Well, and I think Chris was actually kind of talking about was more of a resource management and some of those advanced features. For Project Web, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think Project Web has the resource pieces. That would be Project Pull Up, right? The big Kahoot.
Yeah, it wouldn't be that. Did they change the name, the Project Plan 1 or away from Plan 1? I don't know if they did.
Yeah, something like that. I think you're right.
Yeah, so that's more of just a task list. So it's probably more the smart sheet equivalent, if you will, for that. And then when you moved into the core project management or project server, project web access, whatever it used to be called, that's when you get that resource alignment portion as well. Yeah, Chris, Planner and Project do overlap a bit. But again, what I really like about Planner is how easy it is for users to adopt and use. So, all right.
Yeah, I think you're right, Chris. I think even if it is project for web, it does go on the Project Online Resource Management. So you do have some of that, but you still have to have that Project Online larger SKU to be able to actually do that.
Let me see. I don't know if this demo
Agreed.
Is.
Yeah, you're right, Chris. It is a different world, and there's a lot more going on there.
Sorry, this one doesn't have a license for it, so I can't show you but it does give you that as well. So yes, thanks, Chris. All right, thanks, Don. You should come to all of my demos and talks.
Well, just give me a shout out. I'll figure it out.
All right, so here now that I have this all set up, obviously I have my my task assigned to me. Now, some of the different items here to think about is obviously I assign a task to me, but over across the top, I can look at it in different buckets or different orders. If I choose, I have the ability to filter the items, when they're assigned to me, for instance. So this is where I can, see the one task assigned to me. I also have the ability to look at the list view. So this gives you a little bit more of an Excel spreadsheet-like view. I found this is really quick and easy to add tasks in for it, and then you can obviously move them to what buckets they need to go to. The charts to overview the chart area, see what you need to do and get done. And then, of course, you have the schedule or the overview of the calendar option for us. And so when you think about this, there was a task last Friday for virtual marathon. And then, of course, we have the one for Sunday. The reason why it's red, of course, is because it's overdue in that case. So where did that end up, right? So I have it here. How do I see that another different area? Let me go ahead and jump into Microsoft To Do here. And notice when I click on Microsoft To Do, I have the assigned to me section, and I have that task that's there for it. So when you assign a task to a user, they go into a separate area called assigned to me. With that, then I can go ahead and obviously see that same checklist that's out there. I have the ability to add, information for it if I want to. I can see the overdue. I can add it to my day so I don't forget it. I also have the ability to mark it as being, fully complete as well if I'd like. And so when I mark it as fully complete, it will, essentially remove it from that list. Now that's what you see inside of Microsoft To Do. But what if I fast forwarded and said, all right, how do I stay inside of that Teams ecosystem for us? That's when you can use a tool called Tasks by Planner and To Do for us. And so this here, again, is really just looking at the same element or same information that you saw before. The key difference here, of course, is notice what's missing, right? I don't have the ability to see my flagged emails because it's no longer in Outlook, right? I'm looking at them inside of Teams. Hopefully they bring that in a little bit just so you can get a peek and an idea of what's out there. So here I do have the ability to jump back into this task, for instance. And notice I can mark it complete. I don't need to add the item. And I'll mark that task complete. I also have the ability to jump into other plans, right? So maybe there's another plan out there to be able to take a look at. So these are shared plans, right? This is the plan I was working on or seeing as well before. This is the one that I was using. And so this allows you to actually look at that plan without having to jump into another tool or another area to actually locate that and find that out. So again, from here, Tasks by Planner and To Do are a really good way for you to kind of see all of those brought in. But like I said, the one piece missing from there is the ability to actually see your emails that were flagged. But you're also seeing other project plans that maybe you don't have tasks assigned to, but you want to keep an eye on, right? So there's pros and cons to both of those environments or both of those areas to take a look at. With that, let's go ahead and let's jump into this plan here real quick for us to see it. Let me see if I can get there quick. We'll just go out to Planner. It's weird. All right, so now that I'm inside of the Planner Hub area, this is where I can see all of my project plans rolled up. This allows me to see anything that's been assigned to me. Keep in mind, I've completed everything. Here's the one that I just completed over there on the right-hand side, but this allows me to see kind of my individual view. Maybe you're someone that likes that planner section or the card view. This allows you to see all those items together. I also have the ability to jump into the appropriate plan. So maybe I just click on that. Let's see if I can click on that plan here real quickly. There we go. If I come into that plan, you'll notice that I have the ability, obviously, to see the charts and schedule, but I can come in here and see some of the other different Microsoft 365 group elements. So back to the original question that was out there, that's where you start to see some of that limitation. If your organization has groups turned off, then unfortunately you can't create these for it. But notice you'll have the groups portion, but what I really like is the export plan to Excel as well as the copy plan. So maybe you're someone that needs to create that as a template. And so what this allows you to do is to create a copy, keep track of it, or export it to Excel as well. And then the other one here is the adding a plan to Outlook calendar. This is a common request, right? Where someone says, all right, I want to see all of the tasks in my Outlook calendar. How do I do that? Where do I see it? I don't want to have to use, other applications. So with that here, if I add the plan to an Outlook calendar, this is where I can choose to publish it out. And there's the link, the iCal link, essentially for you to access that and to include that on your Outlook calendar or any calendar for that matter. And so that's an important items for you to keep track of and be able to see it. But keep in mind, you are essentially sharing that information out. All right. Beth, I think hopefully I answered the question for you here, but I'll just go over it one more time. When you, if you keep it private or don't publish it out, then it's not available to anyone. It's only on Microsoft Planner. The only mechanism or method at this time is to actually use an iCalendar link. So this link is technically, more or less anonymous, that anyone on the internet could access that link and be able to add it to their Outlook calendar. I have to do that with like my daughter's sporting things, right? Her lacrosse games and tournaments, to add that in. They generate that iCal link for you. All right, good questions. All right, you'll also notice I have the ability to obviously open it up where it's linked for it. This is, of course, a demo environment, so this plan is linked to the same team in multiple spots, but you can see where it's being linked to. And then, of course, you have the ability to control that and see it. So if you're only using Planner inside of Microsoft Teams, you're missing a few features, right? But keep in mind, if you're using it inside of the browser, you're missing that integration piece. So unfortunately, it's not all one-to-one yet. I think we see that a little bit with some of the announcements, and some of the changes, the ability to, set status of meetings and those types of components that are more or less being brought in now. So hopefully, eventually, everything gets synced or synchronized back up for us as well. All right. Let's see. I think I have, do I have anything else major to go over? I do not. I do have some, core links to take a look at and to see here for it. So if you are someone that's using those links, this does allow you to, see some of the tasks, and there's some use cases there for it, as well as some websites. And then, of course, the tech communities are out there as well. But again, play with it. If you're a OneNote user, see how that goes through the entire process. If you're struggling with task management, use Microsoft To Do to help with that. And if you're struggling on a group setting, then of course utilize Planner if that's available, or maybe a shared list that way. Or come to next month and hear about Sherry's talk on Microsoft lists.